much. Magnitude was still leading at odds of over 40-1, still leading the pack. And the race.
South Point is also proud to provide a variety of relaxing amenities for the guests who want to be pampered. Soak up the sun and let your stress melt away in our lagoon-style paradise swimming pool. A relaxing getaway where you can bask in the desert sun and enjoy seasonal food and bar service poolside. And if you really want to escape, come to Spa Costa del Sur. From couple suites to a co-ed wet area, our spa caters to business and leisure travelers who want to unwind and elevate their senses. A visit to one of our spa's steam, sauna, or whirlpool treatment rooms will leave any guest feeling like they can take on the world. Our gaming amenities include over 60 table games and over 2,600 of the most popular slot and video poker machines. We have penny slots, including the popular Buffalo games, and real machines like Wheel of Fortune, Triple Sevens, and Megabucks. If you prefer video poker, try Deuces Wild, Double Double Bonus, or a variety of multi-denomination games. Or try your hand at one of the most popular casino table games in the world, Blackjack. Don't let the game intimidate you. Blackjack, also known as 21, is both easy and fun. And our dealers are always happy to assist. And the best part? Blackjack always pays 3 to 2. Next, check out the roulette tables. Roulette is one of the easiest casino games to learn, and so much fun to play. It's a favorite of both beginners and seasoned players. In addition to blackjack and roulette, our casino pit features over 60 popular table games like Baccarat, Pai Gow Poker, 3-Card Poker, Ultimate Texas Hold'em, and Mississippi Stud. So get out of your room and come join in the fun.
Welcome in, everybody. Time for another episode of Sports by the Book. We are live from the South Point Hotel and Casino here at the South Point Studio. I'm Alex White. Today, filling in for Kenny White. Next to me is Matt Neverett. Woo! We have not had him on Sports by the Book in a while, but you may know him. Regular guest on Punchlines. Also filled in for us a lot last year, especially NFL. On Mondays, we like to keep it pretty casual. So how was your weekend? Anything you want to share with us? Any exciting?
It was good. I mean, it was in Fresno with UNLV basketball taking on Fresno State. Eked that game out by a point. UNLV didn't score a single point. They scored 2 points in the last 6 minutes of that game. So not quite Illinois, first off, raising that rafter, the banner to the rafters upside down, but then scoring -2 points in the final 8 minutes of that game. They got that basket taken away. A little bit better than that. They were a little bit more efficient than that. But just getting back, kept keeping up with the 4NATIONS and all the college basketball. No days off, especially this time of year for me with my own work, but especially keeping an eye on some of these college basketball matchups.
That's right. I kind of buried the lead there. He's a guest on Punchlines. He's also the voice of the UNLV Rebels, both football and basketball, and of course, the Las Vegas Aviators, the AAA team here. You're very busy. We're happy to have you in here with us. So, you watched some of the 4NATIONS?
Yeah, a little bit. You really only needed to watch the first 9 seconds of that USA-Canada game to see how that one was going to end up. How about that one?
Oh, my gosh. The Kachuk brothers have gained a lot of American fans here.
Very much so.
It's tough, last year watching Matthew Kachuk against the Vegas Golden Knights. Yeah. You kind of dislike the guy. Now when he's on your team and you're rooting for USA, you can definitely start cheering for him.
Well, you always wonder, too, like, especially the goons in hockey or some of the enforcers in some other sports, you hear people, what does their mother think? What do their parents think? Somebody talked to Keith Tkachuk after the game last night, and word for word, the quote was, "Those guys are lunatics. I don't know what to tell you." That's something you say about your buddy at the bar, not your two sons. I thought that was hilarious and the most hockey thing ever.
Well, there is a stat out there that Keith Tkachuk is one of the last international fights before his two sons now.
Yeah.
So it just makes sense.
It's almost like NHL playoff hockey when you get into these tournaments. This tournament, the 4NATIONS one, is all of a sudden turning into one of the most highly contentious and hotly contested hockey tournaments outside of the Olympics or the NHL. And it means a lot to a lot of these guys.
Yeah.
And I think another reason it underscores the difference between hockey and some other sports is, the NBA All-Star Game that was going on this weekend and what the NFL Pro Bowl has turned into. Even the MLB All-Star Game at certain points kind of coming back up now that they're paying some of these guys to perform well. But and then you got these guys fighting 3 times in 9 seconds in a exhibition match. Hockey is just so different than any other sport, and I hope that they never ban fighting because that'll keep fans coming no matter what. Believe it or not, people love watching people punch each other in the face.
They really are different. But you brought up the NBA All-Star as well. Did you watch any of that? Do you like the new format? What were your thoughts there?
Not great. And I said to Ryan McCormick, first thing I walked into the studio today, I said, all right, over under 24 hours until the NBA comes out with some kind of a statement or some kind of change in the rule for next year, because I just don't think I saw anybody say anything positive about it.
No, and even the players were very honest after and said, they don't want us to they're trying to help us not play as long, but then we're just waiting. And
that was the big thing.
Yes.
Because who said the thing about too many breaks? I saw a quote yesterday. I forget who it was from, but it was a player in the game. He said, "There's just too many breaks. You get up, you get going." Especially these guys that are all stars. These guys are all playing, 40 plus minutes a night in a regular game. So they get up, they stay up, and they're in it, and they're activated, as they say, for 40 full minutes. This one, you got 15 minutes. You take a half-hour break. Your body cools down. It takes so much work to get ready for these games for a lot of these guys, and I think it's probably one of the only things that Draymond Green has said that I've ever agreed with. When they asked him about the format, he said it was terrible. He said that, for guys, especially for him, because he didn't get to play in the game, so there's a little bit of salt there, but it takes so much to get ready, especially for a lot of these guys, some of these older guys, that, it is a bore for them to get ready for an NBA game. And then you got to do that 2 or 3 times in the stretch of a couple of hours. That's not good for your body. And I don't think this is going to be something that sticks around for long, at least with this current format. And my other beef, the draft. How is that these teams were decided ahead of time. Yes. They put it through the hour-long facade on TNT as far as who's drafting these teams, and then it ends up just being, the OGs, the Rising Star, Team Shaq. Come on.
Yeah.
Do an actual draft if you're going to do that. We're not stupid. The American public might be, but we're not.
Well, and then the global stars, right? We knew that was kind of
and if you're going to do that, market it as that.
Yes, absolutely.
I remember back in the day here in Vegas, there was a thing called the World Basketball Challenge that they did over at the Cox Pavilion way back in the day, and that was a huge hit because they had all these different teams. It was Magic Johnson had a team. There was a team Europe. There was a team Asia, and people wanted to identify with some of these teams, and that was an exhibition tournament between college players and former pros. This is the NBA All-Star Game. Come on.
Yeah, I think they could learn from hockey, and they've talked about that in the past. Chris Andrews came on the show with me yesterday and was talking about that kind of Team USA versus everybody else, and they can make a solid team, especially right now.
Absolutely.
With the players in the NBA.
International basketball has never been closer to the NBA style, to American style. There's so many aspects of the NBA that are transforming because of what they do over in Europe, especially with the spacing, the big men shooting and passing a little bit more. So the game styles that used to be completely separate are really merging in basketball right now, and I think that would be the perfect way to market it.
And you also brought up MLB, which is getting better, and what I really like about it is players are still doing the home run derby, right? That's kind of really taken off again. Where the 3-point contest, they're bringing in other guys that aren't even playing in the All-Star game.
Yeah.
That's kind of weird that the NBA needs to figure out, too.
I do. I mean, that's the thing for MLB, is the home run derby. You got to be there already. You're not seeing Joey Gallo as the Mac McClung of the home run derby every year, although guys like that would win it just about every year. You got to be an All-Star to earn that.
Right.
And I agree. And it's great for Mac McClung. Happy that he gets his yearly crown. We get to talk about Mac McClung for about 3 days every single year, and that's more than most people can say. So good for him. I do think though that one thing that we're going to see is the dunk contest kind of come back into vogue. I saw John Morant on social media last night basically say that if he could get a couple of other big-time stars to agree to be in the contest, that he would do it as well.
Yeah.
I saw Giannis responded to him directly and said, if you're in, I'm in.
Wow.
A couple of other players have shared similar sentiments on social media. So that was one development that I saw. Yeah, Zach LaVine.
Yeah.
Cannot wait for him to get back in there. Now they just got to get Aaron Gordon, and it'll be a real dunk contest, because that one between Gordon and LaVine was the last real dunk contest, in my opinion, as far as competitiveness.
I think clips were floating around, right?
Absolutely.
Kind of reminding everybody of that last one.
And I mean, there's nothing impressive anymore about dunking over a sedan. You got to go SUV or bust on those nowadays. Maybe even a pickup truck. Get that Chevy sponsorship.
Oh my gosh. That would be very exciting. I think that would help them a lot.
Yeah.
Got to get these big names back in there. So if the players are willing to do it, do you think there is the risk of getting injured? I mean, that's another thing though. Hockey players, they're not worried.
No.
I mean, all of these guys are on teams that are definitely contenders for the Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
And they're still still playing full out in this weekend in this 4 Nations?
I would say, obviously, that risk is there. There's risk of getting hurt getting out of bed in the morning, especially for these guys that are 7 feet tall. Human beings aren't supposed to be that big. But I would say that it's not that much different from a lot of the workouts that they're doing. Now, they're not bringing in cars and wearing capes and using props and dunking, but every time you go up for a layup, you run the same risk of rolling an ankle on the way down. So it's not anything that drastically different from how they train anyway. Now, like I said, no trampolines, no mascots holding the ball up on a hoverboard for you, but I do think that it's not as much of a risk as people would say, but then again, there is that other side where they don't want these guys doing much else other than playing basketball. Like Michael Jordan's contract couldn't get him to stop playing golf.
Right. Well, I mean, you see both sides definitely, but we'll see what they do. I agree with you. I think that we will find out very quickly here from Adam Silver that they are going to make changes moving forward, like we hear every year.
Because that public sentiment was just horrible. And I think the NBA is the one league out of the main four that is most apt to make a quick reactive change to something like that.
Yeah.
Because they've been making all these changes anyway. If MLB changed something in the home run derby like they did a couple of years ago, people's heads would explode because all the writers and all the decision makers are dinosaurs compared to the NBA.
Yeah, that's true. And they are still making changes, though.
Oh, yeah.
So one other thing is it really killed me how they did the whole build-up all day long with people on set like it was Super Bowl Sunday.
Yeah.
Right? They kind of lost me there because I found myself leaving that channel often.
Oh, 100%.
And then waiting for the actual game to begin, which took forever.
It's one of those things like when you're watching, like the CFP bracket reveal, where you're like, okay, it's an hour long, give me the thing and then talk about it. But they do it the opposite way, where they build up, and then the last 5 minutes is the actual part of it. So that's the ESPN, that's the major network model nowadays to keep people viewing because all they care about is the metrics.
I mean, 30-minute pregame show we've had for all of these 4 Nation games. I think that's just perfect. You know what time
100%
to be there, and they don't lose viewers because of it.
Oh,
so.
especially in hockey. They're lifers, and everybody representing their country in these tournaments, that's going to add that extra layer for sure.
Should be really fun. There's 2 tonight, and we know that USA has 6 points. The other 3 teams all have 2. So very meaningful games happening tonight. We'll find out who will be challenging USA on Thursday in Boston. So we'll get to that. First, I do want to start with college basketball. Today's action, 3 big games on the board, and then a lot of extra games, which I know that you do dive down to the extra games as well. Before we get to that, I want to ask you about one huge game that happened Saturday, and that was Auburn going to Alabama. It was 1 versus 2. The SEC is having themselves a fantastic year. Any thoughts on that game? So Auburn did go to Bama, win on their home court by 9, but they definitely outshot them by 3s. I think it was like minus 21 for Alabama. So that kind of leaves them some room. They could be better at that. That is what they do well, and they just weren't doing it that day.
Yeah, and sometimes that'll happen, especially in a tight game, especially in a hostile environment, even at a home game for Alabama. And there was a point late in that game where I thought Auburn was dead in the water. And they found a way to shoot themselves back into it, shoot themselves into the lead, and pulling away by 9 on the road at Alabama of all places. Not the craziest home atmosphere necessarily like it is for basketball or for football, but they do a really good job there in Tuscaloosa, especially nowadays. Nate Oates has done such a good job of building up that program, building up his suit closet as well. He rocks some of the coolest sport coats in college basketball, but he's a legit coach. He is one of the best coaches in the country. I think Alabama is live to have a chance to go through the NCAA tournament. This was the first time ever that Auburn and Alabama had faced off as number 1 and number 2. I think that right now this is as good as these programs have ever been, especially Alabama, especially the last 40, 50 years. And I think we're in for a lot more of that in the SEC tournament. That is going to be a bloodbath this year in the SEC tournament because they've got some of the top teams in the country. I mean, there's going to be teams that don't deserve to get in necessarily, but because they have a couple of upsets over these SEC teams that are going to get in, I mean, it's going to change a little bit, but look at the top 25 right now. 4 of the top 5 from the SEC and 5 of the top 8. It is incredible what the SEC has turned itself into in basketball. I think a lot of it has to do with the NIL money that they're able to bring in for football. These big programs, big facilities, and it's starting to almost be lopsided. And we'll see how this kind of plays out with a lot of these other teams starting to really make big pushes in the NIL realm. But right now, it's SEC or bust for a lot of people.
It's funny because we have one of the teams right now, number 3, that we get to talk about today, who is definitely a contender. Do you think Auburn is the number 1 team right now in the country? Are they for you?
I think so. At this point, they have to be. Going on the road against your rival, who, oh, by the way, is also the number 2 team in the country, that'll keep you at number 1 for another week. Now, Duke, that team that you had mentioned, playing today against Virginia, they're big favorites.
Yeah.
They should blow out the Cavaliers, and that'll springboard them up to number 2 with the Alabama loss. I think right now those are the top 2 teams in the country. When you talk about teams that I wouldn't like to go up against in that top couple, I think Tennessee's up there. I think Houston is really, I was going to say a dark horse. They're not a dark horse with what Kelvin Sampson's done. That is one of the most stifling defenses over the last 20 years. So I think Houston, out of those top couple of teams, and maybe Duke, I would say, are the 2 that I wouldn't want to go up against. I think Auburn has its weaknesses. And I think St. John's playing at the right time, getting hot. Maybe not live to win at all, but I think really has a chance to move into that top 5. And God forbid you give Rick Pitino a 1 seed at St. John's. How about that?
As of yesterday, second best defense in defense efficiency. So we know they're really good on that side. And they can kind of suffocate you. Kind of struggle on the offensive side, though. So that makes me a little bit nervous about St. John's. But we'll see. It's getting interesting. Last question about Duke before we actually go into the game. Do you worry that they are too dependent on Cooper Flagg?
I don't think in today's realm of college basketball, you necessarily can be too dependent on a guy like that. I think we've seen teams like that in the past, and I mean, even all the way going back, and of course there's older examples of this, but 2003, Carmelo Anthony and that Syracuse team was really Carmelo Anthony and a 2-3 zone defense. That was why they were able to win that NCAA tournament with Jim Boeheim. So you can get away with that, and Duke's got the supplementary pieces around Cooper Flagg. He's just the guy that they have gone to late in games, and for good reason. The kid's a stud. He's one of the sweatier college basketball players I've ever seen. I don't know if you noticed that, but he looks like he gets out of the shower every time the game gets within the last couple of minutes. Now, how about this? We said something interesting the other day about a possibility of him returning for another year. You know, it was assumed as the number 1 prospect 3 years ago and moving forward that he was going to be a one and done, like an 8-month and done guy at Duke. He might come back because of the money being thrown around now. Now, I think he should go. I think you take your NBA money and your guaranteed contracts as early as you can get it, especially as the preeminent number 1 pick in this year's class. But a guy like AJ Dynasta next year, who's rumored to be getting $7 million a year from BYU, a little less pressure, you get a little bit more support, especially if he's going to go to a bad NBA team that's going to have that first pick in the lottery. I could see it. Now, in my mind, I go if I'm Cooper Flagg. But it is an interesting decision that these guys have to make nowadays with the money being floated around. And I'm sure he's got agents galore in his ear, which is probably the most negative part of all this stuff going on right now in college sports is the agents and just all the different people trying to pull at the ears of these guys and girls and just trying to, a lot of it is for personal gain. And that's me being on my soapbox. I have beef with some of these agents, especially with what happened with UNLV football this year. But I think it's going to be really interesting to see the public messaging from Cooper Flagg. Now, again, I think he's going to go. I think he should go. But there's a chance. A guy like that 5 years ago, no shot he comes back. Joel Embiid, Kyrie Irving, those guys, they were there to play basketball. They weren't there to play school, as Cardell Jones once said so famously the one time. And Cooper Flagg, one of the more intriguing prospects in my eyes. That's
interesting. And I didn't really ever think about that, but that's very distracting for these guys that are just trying to play ball right now in college and have to deal with all that outside noise all the time.
Very much
I'm sure
so.
It's 24/7. But, I mean, you really can't blame him. And depending on how far they do go into the tournament, he will definitely have a decision to make.
Absolutely, yeah.
But I don't have to make that. Yeah. But let's go into the game today because we do have Duke 14-point favorite on the road and the total 132. Anything you like in this one? I am definitely looking at the total. What about you?
This is a stay away one for me. This is a really good game. Love these big Monday matchups. This is not the Virginia team of old. They are not the lockdown defense that they once were. Duke, big favorite. I like to stay away from these games in general. I do think that the total, which has been going up, opened at 129.5 most places, all the way up to 132 right now. So fading the public, never a bad trend. I do think that this game is going to go under. I don't think Virginia's going to be able to do much of anything against this big physical Duke defense. Honestly, this game tips off at 5 o'clock here on the West Coast. I'd wait. If you want the under, I would wait. It's going to keep going up. It's just like football, just like the Super Bowl. You're going to get all the public money on the favorite and the over, and especially in a matchup like this where it's one of really 3 games that people, nationwide care about. I don't want to degradate these right in extra games because those are my favorites. I got the soft spot for them. But people are going to bet the over and people are going to bet Duke. So if you like the under in this one, which I do as well, and I know you like it as well, I would wait. See if you can get it to 133. God forbid this one go to 134. You hammer that thing.
I agree. And that is great advice because I even had 131 1.5. I have not bet these yet, so I will wait on that. One thing is, my dad always says not to bet against this team if they bet it into a play. But I already have a big enough difference. I thought this game should be 122. So even at the opening number, I was good on the under. But really, Virginia, if they're going to hang around in this one, it's going to have to be because of their defense. We know they still want to play at a slow pace, and Duke's really slowed down their pace as of late. So
you'll see that a lot. A lot of teams at this time of year are going to slow it way down, especially a team like Duke that has the big lead in the ACC. They start to kind of look ahead. Your coach will say, you don't want to look ahead. These guys are looking ahead a little bit. And we see a lot of teams slowing it down, whether it's for that reason, whether it's on the other end of the spectrum, like Fresno State, who UNLV went up against this weekend. At one point, they had the third most possessions per game in all of college basketball. They were one of the fastest teams in the country in terms of getting it up and down the floor. They're now in the 20s because they've had some injuries. They had a player who they thought was going to be eligible that hasn't been eligible. They had an academic ineligibility situation. So for one reason or another, a lot of teams do slow down that tempo this time of year. And I think that the books and the public don't necessarily catch up to that until tournament time. Those games are slow by default because they mean a lot. And with all the free throw shooting late, the defense is at a premium. So you'll see it slow down at the tournament, but teams do like to slow it down at this time in the schedule for sure.
Very good note there. Let's go to the second game, which I know you really like one in this one. Baylor, 1.5 at home against Arizona, coming off of 2 losses in this Big 12 game, total 153.
Yeah, this one is interesting, and I generally, as a system, I'm not a big system better, but I like this one when you have an unranked team at home who's favored over the ranked team coming on the road. I like that one. Arizona coming off that tough loss against Houston. Baylor coming in with a lot of momentum. Yeah. Drew Scott, one of the best coaches, I think, in the country. I think one of the more underrated coaches in a major conference team. Arizona is used to these big Monday spots. I don't know if Baylor necessarily is, but I think that home court advantage matters in a late game like this. And with this Baylor team kind of not living up to the expectations that they had set preseason for themselves, I think this is a big opportunity for them to really make that statement win. Coming off of an overtime game, it's tough. They're coming off that game against West Virginia as well. It's always tough against West Virginia. Not quite Bob Huggins press Virginia anymore, but they're always a tough matchup, especially when you got to go to Morgantown. I've been to Morgantown a couple times. I like it there a lot, but I never had to go up against the press defense up there.
I don't mind this at all. Is it surprising for you as it is for me to see Arizona better on the defensive side?
Very much so.
And then Baylor actually has the better numbers offensively than Arizona.
Which is not what you're used to.
Yeah.
Not what you're used to. And this Arizona team, I talked about the melding of the American and European styles earlier with the NBA All-Star game and what we need to do to fix that. Arizona is a perfect team to kind of demonstrate that because they always have a couple of European guys. They always have a couple of big Euros as well, like a 4 or 5 guys with more consonants in their last name than you've got letters. It is always interesting to see this Arizona team because they're one of those teams that expects to be in the NCAA tournament every year, almost like the Chiefs in the NFL. You get to week 15, the Chiefs are in, you know what they're going to do. They might dial some things back. I don't think they're going to be able to in this game, though, and I like Baylor. I really do think that this is an opportunity for them on a national stage to kind of reestablish themselves and garner a lot of momentum going into the last 4 or 5 conference games.
Personally, think that number is just right. Don't want anything to do with the dog. I do think Baylor should be the favorite at home here, even against a ranked team. I lean to the over a little bit, mostly because of Arizona's pace and 43rd right now in the country, and I think that Baylor can play with them. They also have a trend at home. They are 7-3 to the over at home. So if I were to play it, I'd look to that over. But as we kind of said, things are slowing down right now. End of the conference games here coming up, so things are kind of tightening up. So.
Yeah, I mean, strictly based on the numbers, I think over is a great play. Baylor averaging just over 79 points per game. Arizona averaging over 80 points a game. Anytime you look at a college basketball team in any conference and they're scoring over 80 points a game, that's a pretty good barometer. Yeah. I think in my eyes, that's kind of that magic number where I go, oh, okay, yeah. They consistently score a lot. You got to look on the other side. Defensively, they're allowing 65.5, so that's really good as well for Arizona. But again, this Baylor offense has really been able to find a way to click as of late, and I think that they're going to find a way to get back for the earlier loss to Arizona this year.
Okay, good. Oh, we got a little revenge there. You know I love good revenge. Next up, Kansas State. We're both on the same side in this one. I'll let you start it off. Kansas State going to Utah. Utah's a 3-point favorite at home, coming off a big win over Kansas. Total 146.
I like Kansas State. I like them as the dog even better. I got it at +3. This one, it's 3 now just about everywhere. It opened at about 1.5. It was 1.5 or 2, and it's already moved a full point to a 1.5. BYU Kansas State coming off of a loss to BYU in the last game, but they scored 40 43 points in the second half of that game. Really high number. They just weren't able to come back from a big halftime deficit. But wins over Arizona and Kansas prior for Kansas State. So they came into that game with a lot of momentum. We're talking trends. Kansas State finding a way to be hot when it gets to this point of the schedule. They've won 7 of their last 8 games in the Big 12. Utah has lost 3 of their last 4 against non-ranked opponents. They've been able to find a way to get up against these ranked teams, especially running through the Big 12, which outside of the SEC is the best conference in college basketball. I think these conference trends matter, especially going through the Mountain West slate with UNLV the last couple of years. It's been pretty telling. A lot of these conference trends I've noticed have held up year after year after year, as long as it's this similar coach and similar program building. So I think that one of Kansas State winning 7 of their last 8 games in the conference tells you all you need to know. Jerome Tang, I think, is one of the most underrated coaches in the country. John Rothstein calls him Clubber Tang. I think that's a very apt nickname because they do come out and punch you in the face early in games, and I think that that's going to be a little bit too much for Utah here. So I'm on Kansas State. I know you are as well.
I am. I really like this 3 points. I'm shocked that all the money is going on Utah right now. Move this from a 1.5 to a 3. Maybe it's a little bit of recency bias seeing them beat Kansas, but I've been following Kansas State and how they have been getting hot. I think a lot has to do with Coleman Hawkins, who transferred over from Illinois, which we followed him through the tournament last year with Illinois. Very good two-way player. I think it just took some time for him to click in this with this new team. So I like Kansas State. They're the better defense. You're getting points with them, and they are coming off a loss against BYU. So.
If you like following the money, 92% of the money is on the under in this one. 82% of the money is on Utah. So that's exactly why they have all the steam and the line going against Kansas State. This is one, because it's not necessarily a sexy game, a big game in a lot of people's minds. Nobody is going to write home about this Utah team this year. But I think this is one where we may see, between now and when this one tips off at 6 o'clock tonight, West Coast time, I think we see Kansas State, because they are the better known team, because they have the personality of head coach. We might see this one come the other way.
Okay.
So my advice is the exact opposite of that Duke-Virginia game. I think if you like Kansas State here, take them on the money line right now, or take them at the +3, because I do think it's going to go the other way.
I think I'm going to jump in on the money line as well. I do think they win this game outright, which another good point to that, Matt, is we could have some money line parlays going on between. There's not a whole lot on the board. 3 big games. Utah money line could just be thrown in, which could cause that point spread to move as well.
Yeah, you know that this is a big day. Most big Mondays are, but there's a lot of guys out there that have the money line of all 3 favorites. We're going to see a lot of Duke, Baylor, Utah tickets tonight, I think. We'll have to check with Chris Andrews on that one. But, we're going to get the, I'll call it the Jabroni money line parlay for Big Monday.
And we're going to switch it up because we like Duke, Baylor, and Kansas State here on this desk. But there was one more that was canceled yesterday that we do have to add in with Northern Iowa and Murray State. Mm-hmm. I don't know. We don't have the odds. Oh, yes, we do. Okay, Northern Iowa, 2-point favorite, total 134 here at the South Point. Did you have anything in this one?
I got nothing on this one. I did have something on this one. I always got to have the right in games. This is interesting because it was moved to Nashville, which we had to look it up, is about 2 hours away from Murray, Kentucky, 19th biggest city in the state of Kentucky. Doing my research for this one. You wonder who that affects more, whether it's the home team that all of a sudden thought they were going to have that home game and now they got to go to a neutral site 2 hours away via bus, or whether it affects a Northern Iowa team that was probably already there and hanging out at the hotel by the time they canceled it. So they're both going to have similar commutes. Sometimes a game like that where the road team's already going through some, I don't want to call it adversity, but it is tougher to play on the road than at home. That's no secret. A team's already kind of going through that. You get a detail like this thrown in with the wrinkle and you're like, oh yeah, why not? Yeah. Whereas at the home team, I feel like generally speaking, you're going to have the bigger, like, oh no, come on reaction. So I do think that Northern Iowa could find a way to take advantage of this. I'm seeing it drop at some places already to 1.5. So the money is coming on Murray State. A lot of people don't like betting the road favorites, but I wouldn't necessarily be as scared to bet on Northern Iowa in this one than I normally would be in a situation like this. I like the breakdown. Now we got to go to one. We each have one extra board game here. Oh, yeah. Let's start with yours with Bucknell and Lehigh. Current number at the South Point, Bucknell 6.5, and the total 140. Ooh, so this is one that is moving because it was 5.5 when we sat down in the studio about an hour ago. You're right. I am taking Bucknell at 5.5 because that's what it was when I got there. Already up to 6.5. So this is one that's flying. This one's going to be on CBS Sports Network at 4 o'clock. So you're going to be able to watch this one of 2 extra games nationally televised. Love the Patriot League. Love a lot of the games that you can take advantage of in that league, especially with a smallish line. Yeah. I mean, you look at the standings, so to speak. Duke, Virginia, You got a top-tier team and a bottom-tier team. It's almost the exact same here in the Patriot League. Bucknell comes in second in the Patriot League. Lehigh, one of the bottom 3 teams in that conference. And I talked about the conference trends and how I've noticed that they have had some consistency, especially when it's within the same season. So a couple of that I like in this game, reasons that I like Bucknell, they've won 8 of their last 9 Patriot League home games, including 7 in a row. So when they are favored against a conference opponent at home, they have dominated. A couple of reasons why I want to fade Lehigh in this one. They've lost each of their last 5, now get this, road night games in conference play. And normally a trend like that is going to be too specific for me. I like trends. I don't like them when they're crazy specific. I like them to be a little bit more generic. But as I said, this one matters because it's in conference play. And not to get on the soapbox again, time of game matters, especially when you get to this point of the year, especially in a league like the Patriot League. They're not playing Big Monday games.
Right.
They are playing either Monday, Friday, or Tuesday, Saturday. It's very consistent within a day each week. So these teams get in a routine. They get in a schedule. The night games on the road are a little different than the early games on the road. And this one's going to be at 7 o'clock on the East Coast. I think that is a trend that you can follow. The road night games in conference play. I'm going to go with Bucknell. The other one, too, take a look at the first half in this one. Lehigh has been one of the slowest starting teams in all of college basketball. Their last 15 road games. They have lost the first half in 13 of them. I think that's a trend that you can follow as well. They do not come out and play well, whether at home or on the road, but it gets exacerbated on the road in conference play, and especially in these night games. All that being said, I'm going to go with Bucknell, and I got it at 5.5. So if you like this one, I would take it quickly because I do think that the public money is coming in on Bucknell for sure.
It makes a lot of sense, especially like you're saying, you have their routines, and also it's a grind. And right now, Lehigh this is one of 4 games left, kind of just trying to get to the tournament. As long as, do you know the Patriot League? Do they all make it into the tournament?
That is a conference I don't know the format offhand.
I didn't mean to just throw that at you, but
no, I would assume so in a conference like that. And the other thing too, another wrinkle is that, and maybe it's just me hating the cold weather, but the travel is so much different conference by conference, team by team, especially on the East Coast, because there are a lot of teams within close proximity of each other. You're taking a lot of buses. It's snowing. You got flights canceled. A lot of these teams fly commercial. I mean, we're spoiled on the Mountain West with UNLV. We charter just about everywhere. The weather, we've had worse weather this year for football on the road than for basketball. So we've been incredibly fortunate there. These teams on the East Coast haven't been quite as fortunate with the weather, with the delays, with the buses, with the long nights, the hard travel. It is a grind, especially for the teams in the Northeast.
I did just look up my spreadsheet from last year. So in the Patriot League, the home site for the higher seed. So I bet you they keep that.
Yeah.
And then top 6 get a bye, which it looks like Lehigh is out of right now.
Yeah.
And
not quite the WCC where the top 2 teams get like a quadruple bye to the semis.
I do. Yeah, that one is very, very unique, and that one is staying that way. WCC, man, those 3 get it done again. San Francisco, Gonzaga, St. Mary's.
That's it right now in that conference.
It really is.
And Gonzaga kind of dragging their way to be within that 3 because St. Mary's is one of the most shut down defensive teams in the country. When they don't want you to score, you're not going to score. And then San Francisco is, I think, an unheralded team in that conference just about every year. They do a great job. They've got great support. People forget that was one of the preeminent blue bloods in the early days of college basketball. My buddy Bill Cartwright, huge San Francisco Dons fan, and he was telling me about what it was like playing back in the 70s and the 80s in that conference, and especially for San Francisco. It was a big deal, and that's a team that is kind of on the rise for sure.
Yeah, they definitely are. Fun to watch. Are you helping out with that conference?
Not this year. I'm involved in just about every other conference tournament, though. We're still doing the Big West, and then I got a couple of Mountain West games as well this year.
Okay, very good.
We'll see. And I'm doing the Rebel games in that tournament. So yeah, tournament week in Vegas is going to be even busier than normal for me.
Are you doing the Rebel games during the Mountain West Conference tournament?
Yep. As long as they make it, I'll be there, bouncing back and forth. That's not too far of a drive from Lee's Family Forum to the Thomas and Mack.
Hey, we're going to talk about the Mountain West, and I want to look at the conference, but they're kind of fighting their way because top 5 get a bye, right, for Mountain West. So they're right there at number 6. We'll kind of dive into that after. I have one more game on the extra boards, and then we'll take a little break, get into some futures with college basketball, and then talk about some hockey for tonight. But I'm looking at Morgan State and North Carolina Central. I really like this total. I'm going over in this one. So 158, I believe, is the current, or that's where I got it. Oh no, it has already moved up. 160, 160 and a half. I still like it here at this one, and that is because right now Morgan State 32nd in pace. North Carolina Central, they do like to play a little bit slower, but they have a trend at home. They're 6-2 to the over at home. Both these teams are far better offensively than they are defensively, both out of the top 330 defensively. So I do expect points to be scored in this one. First time they played, it did go to double overtime. In regulation, there was 158 points scored, but like I said, North Carolina Central trend to the over at home, and Morgan State as well, 8-2 to the over on the road. So I think it'll benefit our over for that one. So over 160.5 finishes it off for my board with 3 in a row. But we'll show our boards at the end of the show, as we always do. We'll take a quick 1-minute break. When we get back, we're going to talk 4 Nations and some college basketball futures.
We have 11 amazing restaurants featuring a wide variety for every price range and appetite. South Point's Garden Buffet has something for everyone at unbeatable prices. Or, if hunger strikes in the middle of the night, join us at Coronado Cafe. The American menu offers breakfast, lunch, or dinner 24 hours a day, plus a Chinese kitchen for authentic Chinese dishes from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. From steak and eggs to wonton soup, it's fast and friendly service 24/7. When you need a quick pick-me-up, you can find it at our state-of-the-art Starbucks just inside the main South Point entrance. Order ahead with the Starbucks app for easy mobile order pickups. Or enjoy your favorites in the relaxing dining area anytime, day or night. If you love Mexican food, Baja Miguel's has all of your south of the border favorites. There are dozens of classics to choose from, like fajitas, ceviche, chimichangas, tacos, and more. And for spirit lovers, Baja's colorful non-smoking tequila bar is right outside. Or maybe you're in the mood for seafood. Big Sur Oyster Bar has fresh seafood prepared right before your eyes. Savor freshly shucked oysters, crab legs jambalaya, shrimp and lobster. Beers on tap and a selection of fine wines are perfect to pair with your seafood favorite. Whether lunch or dinner, you'll love this fun atmosphere, located just off the casino floor. Ready to shake things up? Step back in time and treat yourself to one of the oldest restaurant chains in the country. Steak and Shake, famous for original mouth-watering steak burgers and hand-dipped milkshakes in a variety of flavors. For some old-fashioned fun, try Steak and Shake.
Welcome back, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us on this Monday, February 17th. Shout out to the crew behind the glass. We got Ryan, Vince, Jerry, and Andrew, of course. And then everybody in the chat. We appreciate you guys jumping in and being vocal in there. Joey B, of course, he's talking about new generation of young players in hockey. Outstanding Saturday night. And then we also got Dean Hilt, as always. Thank you, Dean, for joining us. JR, welcome in. Happy President's Day. Thank you for bringing that up as well. Tony's Picks is in there. And then also Nick and Minidar. So appreciate you guys all hanging out with us and commenting in there. Let us know if you have any more questions for us. I hear that I'm a little bit behind on hockey. Is this true, Matt?
Yeah, Canada going against Finland right now. The Canucks already up 2-0 in the first period. I think that's no surprise to anybody. They were a big favorite anyway, that game at the Garden in Boston. You want to talk about a pissed-off team ready to come out and crack some skulls? That's going to be Canada in this one. I don't know. We got to go see. Ryan, can we confirm, were there over 3 fights in 9 seconds in this one? In the first 9 seconds? No, okay. Wouldn't surprise me if there was with a Canada team like this. And I think to Joey B's point about the young generation, I think my favorite tweet that I saw about the USA-Canada matchup, outside of some of the funny ones about the anthem booing, was an entire generation of Canadians grew up wanting to be Sidney Crosby, so now they don't have any good goalies. Yeah, because that's where all the goalies used to come from. There wasn't a team that didn't have a Canadian goalie.
No, and now it really is pretty USA heavy with the best goalies. Yeah. But we actually talked off air, and I do want to just bring this up for a second, but there is a really good goalie out there who is now on the Capitals that could have been on the Canadian team that didn't make it.
It should have been on the Canadian team. That's Logan Thompson. I mean, this is an example of personal beef spilling over into the professional world, right?
Yeah. Definitely.
DeBoer and Cassidy, two of the coaches for the Canadian teams, obviously have the beef with Logan Thompson, and they let that trickle over. It was a big deal when they didn't select him, and it hurt them against the USA team. they're going to be just fine, I think, elsewhere. And I think it's going to be USA-Canada once more in one of the most hotly contested rematches. And I think one of the most watched hockey games outside of the NHL ever.
Oh, yes.
Because the viewership numbers for the last one were incredible. I think it peaked at over 5 million viewers.
Wow.
Which is really big for non-NHL, non-Stanley Cup NHL games. I mean, that's a Stanley Cup level audience. And I think it's going to be even more than that likely the next time that these two teams match up.
I'm very excited. So right now, Canada really just has to win in regulation, and they are in because they do have the head-to-head against Sweden. So even if Sweden were to win in regulation, and they both did, Canada would move on. So 2-0 right now, just 7 minutes into the first period. Did not realize it started that early.
Not necessarily 10 a.m., yeah.
Yeah.
My question is, and I don't think that this will ever change, but the Four Nations, feels newer. I don't remember it being this big of a deal in the past. And also, B, there needs to be some kind of like relegation. You come in fourth, another country gets to come in and fill that spot. Get some really interesting matchups in that one, I think. You get like the Czech team sliding in for Finland or Sweden, whoever comes in last. I think there's some other teams that could produce a really solid roster to compete in this tournament, especially at this time of the season.
Oh my gosh. Team Russia would be Vasilevsky at goalie and Shesterkin.
Yeah.
They would have some really good goalies.
They'd be really good. There should be some kind of relegation if there isn't already.
Yeah. No, it's been a lot of fun. I'm curious to see if they just keep it year in after year out, or maybe kind of try to spread it out so it doesn't get too normalized. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there was so much pride and built up ready for this Four Nations. If we started to do it every year, I don't know if it would have that same feel. But
and I'm reading this article right now. It's the first, they call it best on best tournament with featuring NHL players in 9 years.
Wow.
So it's hockey is one of those sports where they say, or against Canada rather, he had 6 hits. 3 on Crosby, 3 on McDavid.
Yep.
They sent him out there to headhunt.
Yes, they definitely did. So good for Canada. Honestly, I mean, I'm holding a futures ticket on USA plus 150 before it started. Plus
I love that.
Plus 160. I'm sorry, but I still want it to be Canada, even though that's going to be the toughest one on Thursday.
Well, you want the best matchup.
We want the best matchup.
It's going to be a hell of a game.
It is, really. And Finland was the underdog coming into this, so I'm not completely surprised with this big lead for Canada. As you mentioned, angry team.
Yeah.
What are we going to do with USA today? They are a huge favorite here at the South Point, minus 180, and the total 6 under, minus 120. I'm still trying to find, and we were going to look on Twitter or X, whatever we're calling it, to see if we know who's going to be the goalie. I would assume they'd give Hellebuck a day off today.
You would think so. In a game that doesn't matter, they're already locked in. Joey B pointed out that Tkachuk and McAvoy have been ruled out for this one, so it seems like they're kind of going with that Week 17, Week 18 NFL roster, sitting all the starters once you already are in the playoffs and the seeding set. There's nothing USA can do at this point to fall out of the championship. They're in no matter what. So this game is a tune-up. I think you rest your best players. I think you go back up goalie. I think you really it also gives them confidence. If they're missing these guys, they go out and they beat Sweden. I think that they're going to be able to be buoyed with confidence even more so going into this likely matchup against Canada in the championship.
So Matthew Tkachuk did not play that third period against Canada. I'm not surprised that he is definitely sitting out. But you're right. They think they should play as well. And he brought 3 goalies. If you're in this spot, I think that you should give another guy an opportunity.
Why not use it? It does not matter. I'm with you wholeheartedly there. You wonder sometimes during the NHL regular season, you're like, all right, this goalie, why is he not playing? He just had they all are on a schedule. It's like a pitcher in Major League Baseball.
Yep.
They're on these schedules. And I think the NHL teams would be very excited to see some guys like Hellebuck get a break in a game like this, especially after the bloodbath against Canada.
Well, and I mean, his team plays him so often, but a lot of teams these days are really trying to almost have a 1A, 1B, right?
Yeah.
And give them a little more rest. So
we've
we'll
seen
see
the Golden
what
Knights
they do.
go with that a little bit.
I think that there is some value here with Sweden. I really do. I mean, they had 2 overtime games coming into this one.
Yep.
So lost by 1. So what are we getting there? Puck line, we do have to lay a price. I would more just have a little pizza money on Team Sweden, I think.
I think so. I think over might be something to take a look at as well. Backup goalie. Here we are harping on the backup goalie. Leads to typically more goals, especially with a guy who has not been playing in a tournament like this. And Sweden, they're already going to know their fate by the time that this one drops at 5 o'clock here on the West Coast. But, maybe a team with nothing to play for goes out and finds a way to score 4 or 5 goals against a depleted USA roster.
That's a very good point.
I'm not going to bet it, but just to lean, especially if you can get it at plus money. I'm seeing it right there at even. But I'm with you. If you're going to play it, $10-20 on Sweden, see how it goes.
Yeah, or the over, because that's a good point as well. Now they have nothing. If Canada wins, nothing really to play for but pride still for their country. Go out there and kind of just play loose.
And Sweden plays the wide open style anyway, so they're a team that typically scores a lot, allows a lot. 6 is an elevated number for a game like this, but there's value, especially if it's at plus money.
7 was the final in both of their first 2 games against Canada, and then in their loss to Finland in overtime as well. So both of those angles, I do think it is worth getting a little bit of value there if you're going to play that game instead of laying a price. Let's jump over to college basketball futures. I really want to get your thoughts on this Mountain West Conference because I haven't got to talk to you much. You cover it daily, weekly. You're at a lot of games. You've seen every single one of these teams. First, I want to talk to you about a down year, kind of. We're projected to have less teams this year into the Big Dance than last year and the year before.
A lot of that is due to the fact that there wasn't as much dominance by the Mountain West Conference in the early part of the non-conference slate. So you're not seeing these teams that went into conference play already with 11-12 wins like we saw at this point last year. Looking at teams like Boise State, San Diego State, teams that didn't necessarily run through the non-conference slate like they typically do. So in my eyes, I could see the Mountain West getting 2 bids, maybe 3 at the absolute max, depending on what plays out. It's tough because there's really just been the 2 dominant teams. It's the first 5 or 6 is kind of just a weird mesh of really the top 6 teams, and then there's a good drop off between the bottom 4. But Utah State and New Mexico have been consistently the top 2 teams. They're the only 2 that really took care of business like they were supposed to in the non-conference slate. They're 2 teams that play a very unique style. They're probably 2 of the 3 best home court advantages in the Mountain West Conference, along with San Diego State as well. And lo and behold, I think the 3 best home atmospheres for a home team in the conference are number 1, 2, and 3 in New Mexico, Utah State, San Diego State. Probably 3 of the best coaches as well. And Utah State's the one that really, really stands out because they have had in the last 17 years 10 head coaches. They're on their 4th head coach in 5 years. Lo and behold, they were able to not only bring in some big impact players, but keep their 2 top returner scorers. Ian Martinez out of Puerto Rico has been phenomenal. He is one of the top outside shooters in all of college basketball. And this Utah State team, I think one of the most intriguing teams when it comes to a matchup on a neutral site in an NCAA tournament setting.
That's interesting. And you talked about the top 3 right there, really having that home court advantage. And that kind of hurts them when they get into a neutral setting. But you think Utah State will be able to overcome that? I
do. I think that they travel well. They got a very dedicated fan base. The flight's not too far from Logan to Vegas, or you got to drive that hour and a half to Salt Lake first. Adds a little bit to it. But they're a team that always represents well at the conference tournament. It helps that the conference tournament has been held at the Thomas & Mack Center since they moved it back from Denver 20 years ago. I've been fortunate enough to go to the conference tournament. The first stop in Vegas, it was there when we lived in Denver, so I went to it in Denver and then back at the Thomas & Mack Center, and they're able to just get more fans of these teams. I want to call them like locals of these markets to come to Vegas than necessarily to go to Denver and venture through the big city. And that big ball arena is just massive, and it kind of we're seeing a lot of conference tournaments do this where they're going to some smaller venues so that they can fill more of the seats. The Big West did that when they moved from the Honda Center to then the Dollar Loan Center Arena, now Lee's Family Forum, with about 7,000 seats. And it just looks a lot better. Looks a lot better on TV. And the Mountain West tournament being in the same spot is definitely helpful for some of these teams.
Any dark horses that you think could make a run through the Mountain West Conference tournament? Because, of course, we're expecting 2 bids, right?
Yep,
but
I would say so.
There could be a bid stealer if somebody else wins the Mountain West.
That's what it's going to be. And I think at this point, I'd have to see what the projections are as far as New Mexico and Utah State, if they don't win the tournament, if they're going to be an at-large bubble team kind of on there. But I think one team that's live is Boise State. With Tyson Dagenhart, they've been able to keep one of their top players in school history. Leon Rice is one of the best coaches in the Mountain West Conference. He's the most established coach in Boise State history. They're another team that has a pretty good home court advantage, but they travel especially well. I think Andrew Meadows is kind of an unheralded player for them around the outside. He does a lot of things well. UNLV has seen Boise State twice. Boise State, 2 pretty convincing wins over the Rebels. I think that they are a dark horse team. We'll see Colorado State coming up this Saturday. That'll be the second go-around for UNLV. The thing for the Rebels against those two specifically, there was a stretch, I think it was about a month and a half ago, where it was back-to-back road games at Boise State, at Colorado State, 22-point losses in both of them in a 4-day stretch. So they're kind of turning things around. The Rebels lost to Boise State in the return match to Vegas. It was a lot more competitive. I think that Colorado State is a team that doesn't have the size or the physicality that some of these other top teams do. So it's a team that I can see getting picked off in a road setting. So in my eyes, it's really New Mexico, Utah State. I would say the next 5 teams, like San Diego State, Colorado State, Boise State, and then the 2 Nevada-based teams, and then everybody else. There's really the 3 tiers in the Mountain West in my eyes, especially like the bottom of the conference. San Jose State could knock somebody off. I think Wyoming's a tough team, but they were really kind of cobbled together roster-wise. They basically built that whole team in 27 days when they hired Sundance Wicks, the new head coach. And then Fresno State and Air Force can't get out of their own way. Fresno State was the team I was talking about earlier with all the injuries and slowing way down. And then for Air Force, it's so tough for these service academies nowadays. I think we're going to see all 3 of them, Army, Navy, Air Force, eventually move to independence because it's just so tough without the ability to offer NIL nowadays. To not only get guys to come to your school, but to keep them. They're allowed to leave after 2 years. We saw Ritas Petritis take advantage of that and transfer from Air Force to Cal before his military commitment kicked in. You have to be a special. UNLV went out there to Viejas Arena and won on the road. It was a tight game, but San Diego State made a lot of mistakes, and you don't normally see that from a Brian Dutcher or a Steve Fisher coach team. It's one of the most dependable coaching jobs in all of college basketball with those two. You take that job for life if you're going to go up on the Mesa there. I think with the home atmosphere they have at Viejas Arena, I put them in the top 3 pre-conference play. 5 games left just about for everybody in the Mountain West, so I'll be interested to see how they finish up. They got the return game against UNLV, who matches up well against them here in a couple of weeks. So now my answer could change, but for right now, I would say it's the top 3.
It's interesting, too, because they kind of have a little bit of a home court here for the Mountain West tournament, too. Right?
Very much so, yeah. They're one of those teams, honestly, another team that's surprising, but when Wyoming's really good, they travel so well.
Yes,
they have a lot of people that live in Vegas anyway. So feel for the Cowboys. Sundance Wicks, who got the job this year, is a really good, really energetic head coach. I don't know if I've ever seen a team where you go out on the road and the coach is out there shooting free throws on the floor before the players ever even get out there to warm up. So it's interesting right now in the Mountain West. I think, like I said, there's tiers, and that's going to be a hotly contested tournament for what's likely to be a 2-bid league.
Now, any thoughts on the referee that does the high knees?
Jeffrey Anderson. He's the best. He's the best. If you want a good Twitter follow, X follow, whatever we're calling it, if you just search up Jeffrey Anderson high knees, there's an account that posts videos of him every night because these college basketball referees, I think I'm busy. These guys work in a different city every single night. They're doing like 5-6 games a week, different city every night. Heine's, I got a great story about him.
Okay,
so my brother Drew worked in athletics operations at South Carolina when he was a student there. And one of his jobs was almost as a liaison to the refs and get them in the building, make sure they have everything they need. Every school has a ops guy whose job that is. He got in the conversation with Jeffrey Anderson when he was in college and asked him why he runs like that. And he's like, "Is that just how you run?" He goes, "No, I didn't run like that until I was like in my 40s. I guess a doctor recommended that because it's better for his spine, because he's basically just running straight lines back and forth every night. I guess it's good for his spine. It's great for social media, at the very least. I think he's one of the better refs. I think him and Vern Harris are probably my 2 favorites, although Vern doesn't quite have the gait that he does with the little with the knees. I don't know why, but yeah,
it's kind of spreading, right? I've seen more
and more guys. Yeah, whatever that doctor is needs to write the book and profit off of that. Yeah,
I love it. So it's a good follow. That's how I did find it, actually.
Heine's, he's awesome.
Was on social media. But last but not least, do you have any teams outside of Mountain West that you're kind of looking at that you might want to jump in and grab a futures bet on? Remember last year, you and I were doing a show together. Kenny White was our guest via video, and he gave out some crazy, well, we thought were crazy. Gonzaga. Yeah. I think he even threw out NC State.
He did throw out NC State.
Yes.
How about that?
Yeah.
It's tough right now. I think Auburn is obviously live. You look at a team, like I had mentioned too, in Houston. A water bottle. It goes to the studio. I think Houston's a really good team to take a look at right now. I think Tennessee is also a team that might be able to get over the hump this year. They've been one of the best teams in the regular season in the SEC for the last however many years, but just haven't been able to win those big games come tournament time. They're a team that typically gets upset pretty early. Iowa State with the defensive pressure was another one that I would keep an eye on outside of the SEC.
Iowa State, now they're better offensively than they were last year. That's been their problem. That's been the problem, is that they're always one of the best defensive teams. Obviously, we have the familiarity here in Vegas with TJ Otzelberger, the previous head coach at UNLV, taking Keyshawn Gilbert with him, and Gilbert's one of the best premier perimeter
defenders on ball in all of college basketball. He is just stifling when he wants to be. And I think Iowa State, they've won some big games. They've lost a couple big games this year, but they've played some big-time matchups, and they're one of those teams where the lights aren't going to be too bright for them. And I think that they're live. Sorry about it, Patino, but I don't think St. John's is live to win.
No. Maybe find a good plus price on Final Four. I'm going to try and
get them a
for
1
those.
seed, and I'm happy.
Oh my gosh. Iowa State, though, I agree with you. They lost in overtime to Arizona. Remember, that's when Caleb Love just threw up that 3, and then won in overtime. They lost to Kansas State. That was kind of Kansas State's run. And then Kansas, I think teams kind of need that. Right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
It was looking scary for a second, and then they turned it back around. Big convincing win over TCU, and now we'll see how they do the rest of the season. They have Houston coming up.
That's going to be, I think, the barometer of where they are as far as the national scale and beating the best teams in the country. I think Houston right now at 10-1. That's a good number. They opened it at 15-1. You see a lot of these teams where the number really, really takes a big dip. Looking at like Tennessee, they opened at 40-1 preseason. They're now 12-1. Auburn 25-1. Now it's 7-2. Florida at 60-1. Now 12-1. But then you look at a team like Houston who had the big expectation. And 10-1, not the greatest number. But when you compare that difference between where they were expected and where they are now, it's not that much different. You know what you got with that Kelvin Sampson coach team. And I think better defensively than Iowa State, better offensively than a lot of these teams as well in the top 10. Definitely.
Better defensively, especially this year. We'll see. I kind of get nervous, though, when they put all their eggs in one basket to win their conference tournament.
Yeah.
And Houston was upset by Iowa State last year. I feel like they might be going for revenge in that spot. But 9-1, actually.
That your dad's on Purdue.
Definitely. Well, and they've lost 2 in a row. Michigan, Wisconsin. We got to see what they can do. They have Michigan State next. That's going to be a tough one. That is
Izzo with
tomorrow.
the upset. The team, that they really probably shouldn't have won against Illinois. All it took was a banner hanging upside down to give them the edge. I think that could be a hangover game for Michigan State.
Yeah, and that was the game to make him the winningest coach, right?
Yeah. So I'm sure a lot went into that game. From a coaching perspective, now that he's kind of over that hump, I'm not going to say he's going to mail it in because he's one of the best. He's a Hall of Fame head coach and one of the best of all time. But there is that mental fatigue factor.
Well, after he tied it up, he was like, "We're going to party." He was excited about that, so he's got to be excited.
So a literal hangover game.
Literal.
That's a 3-day hangover, man.
I feel bad. I stretched it out, talking a lot about college basketball. Let's just hit on win totals for MLB.
I'm ready.
Just if anything really jumps out to you, and we'll have you back on to really give you your final. You do 4 or 5 a year?
I always do 5 win totals a year, and I have gone 3-2 on them each of the last 5 years. So profiting some. I got lucky this year. I typically try to do 3 unders and 2 overs because I remember learning when I was working at a book back in the day across town that there just statistically are more losses than wins when it comes to how the books set these totals. So you're better off if you're going to do 5 or 6. If you're betting a rough or similar number of these, you're better off doing 1 more under than you are an over. I got lucky on it last year because the Pirates got over on that last series of the year against the Yankees. But yeah, I always do 5, and there's always 1 or 2 of the losses, if not all of them, that are just super close. Last year, I had some tough ones. But a couple of the ones I'm taking a look at this year, I think the Chicago Cubs got a lot better. They won 83 games last year. Their number is at 86. They added Kyle Tucker. They added Ryan Presley. I think that they're going to be 3 games better in a division that really didn't do a lot outside of them. You got the Pirates, who really haven't added that much. You got the Cardinals, who really haven't added that much as one of the older teams in baseball. I think the Reds are another team that I might take a look at as far as the over. They won 77 games last year, is the youngest everyday roster in Major League Baseball, and their total's at 79. I think that's a team that could go 82-80 in Cincinnati. A couple other ones that I'm taking a look at. Where was the one? Oh, the Giants. They won 80 games last year, right at 79.5 this year. And I took over last year. I got burned, but I might take a second crack at the apple on San Francisco this year. The other one, too, that I like might be a homer play because this was my childhood team, the Boston Red Sox. I think they got at least 5 games better with the additions that they've made, especially in the last couple of days. Getting Alex Bregman, trading for Garrett Crochet. Their whole rotation and bullpen is basically made up of former White Sox, which I think is hilarious. But they were at 86 games this year. They won 81 last year. I think they got 5 games better, and I think Boston is a team that I'll definitely take a bite at. I'll have a play on a couple more of these ones. I always like to compare and contrast the wins from last year versus where the book has them this year. Even without taking a look, as long as you know generally, some of the moves that were made and the teams that have added and lost, in free agency and trades. The Milwaukee Brewers, I think, a perfect example of that. They overachieved last year with 93 wins. The book expects them to be a full 9.5 games worse at 83.5. That's one that I might take a look at on the over just by default. Now, I'm not going to take 3 NL Central teams because I do like the Cubs and the Reds on over, but I definitely like to take advantage of some of these. I think, too, there's advantages to take advantage early. There's opportunities where, Cleveland, another perfect example. They won 92 games last year. Might have overachieved a little bit, but that division top to bottom is them in Kansas City or bust.
Yep.
And the book's got them at 82. That's one that I'm very, very likely going to play. Cleveland always has an opportunity in that division to win over 82 games, and I think they're going to try or take advantage of that again this year.
I know it'd be very scary to go unders with some of these big name teams like New York Yankees or the Dodgers, but is there any value that you can see? Is 104.5? What do we think for the Dodgers? You can't take that under, right? It's just stay away.
I know. And I won't have a play on the Dodgers. 104.5. They won 98 games, went out and made all the additions. That one's tough. I remember 2 seasons ago, it was 103.5. 102 or 103.5, and I was on the over, and it came down to the last game of the year, and they won it to go over that win total. So those ones are always tight. The margin of error on those big ones is razor thin. Like the Yankees at 92.5, looking at the Braves at 92. Those are some of the ones that immediately jump out as the higher numbers that, they'll get close. But you look at a team like, the Nationals at 71.5. They won 71 games last year. They're a team that could win 78, 79 games and get you over and be on that pace early on in the season.
Yeah.
But then you look at the Yankees and the Dodgers, that number is going to be right about where they end up because right now you could probably look at the Dodgers and say, they're going to win 96 to 105 games. They're a team that you could certainly place a range on. You could get even more specific than that if you want. But I think that those ones, the margin of error is so razor thin. One that I was on last year that I think I'm going to be on again, though, the Phillies. 91.5. They won 95 games last year, and I think that they were upset about how the season ended. They are a World Series roster in terms of talent, in terms of management, in terms of the way that their system is brought up. I think they're a team that could win 92 games easily. I'll have some more research, some more plays on these, but those were just the initial ones that stood out immediately taking a look at last year's results.
You will have your official plays. The Phillies scare me because the Braves had so many injuries, so they were fortunate in that regard to get a bunch of those wins, and now the Mets.
I know.
What are we going to do with the Mets?
Yeah, it's tough. With a division like that, I think it's probably the most top-heavy division in Major League Baseball because then you got the Marlins who spent as much money as you and I did on Major League free agency this offseason. They didn't add anybody, so they're a team. 63.5 might not be a low enough total for them.
That's true. That might be a good under to look at right there, especially with those top-heavy teams. Matt, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Fantastic job. We are going to show our whiteboard. Again, everybody, thank you behind the glass. I'm going to check in with the chat one more time. Sounds like some people might be going Canada on Thursday if they win today, which I definitely cannot blame them. It is going to be a great game.
That's okay, Damon.
Yep, that's okay. But Joey B, I think we got everybody else. Damon?
Just about, yeah.
Yeah, thank you guys sir, for joining us. Going to our whiteboard plays. Maybe we aren't going to do the graphic because that might be a little. All right, here we go. Starting off with Matt's. We got, there it is.
There we go. I like it. I can be Kenny White for today.
There we go.
I'm on Baylor, minus 1.5. That number's moving. I'm on Kansas State plus the 3. And I'm on Bucknell. I got him at 5.5. If you're going to take Bucknell, take him here soon. Let's go Bison tonight.
Yes, very good. I am going with the under, and we decided we're going to wait here until we get the best number. Got to be careful, though. 132 is the number I'm seeing right now, and that's the number we want. Duke and Virginia under minus 132. I'm going with you, Kansas State, plus the points. I also like them on the money line to get the outright win against Utah. And then an extra board game here. Morgan State, NC Central over 160.5. And I would jump on
points,
that
baby.
One. Lots of points in that one and a fast pace, please. That's it for us for today. Thank you again for joining. Remember, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m., every day, Sports by the Book. I'll be back tomorrow. Matt, thank you again.
Absolutely.
And in 1 hour, go to Punchlines FN. Frank Nicotero and myself will be there. Bye, everybody. Thank you so much. This has been Sports by the Book at the South Point Studio.